How many goats should a homesteader own? Why do I think you should process your own deer, and why do I do it? And why am I not a big fan of using movable electric netting for goats, sheep, or other livestock? We're going to answer those questions and a whole lot more in today's episode of Ask Homesteady. This is Ask Homesteady. If you want to get your question answered in Ask Homesteady, it's very simple. Just put hashtag Ask Homesteady, all one word, and then a question in any of the comments of any of our videos. Well, in your comment on any of our videos. And every Friday when I do this question and answer part, I look for that and I will find it and I will get your questions answered. So, let's dive right in today. We've got some really good questions. We'll start with Lisa. Lisa asks, she says she's going to be getting some land in a few months. Congratulations, Lisa. That's exciting. I'm wondering your opinion on something. How many goats, Nigerians or Nigerian Nubian crosses most likely, do you think one person can handle if they don't need a ton of milk and want gardening and building a food forest to be their homestead's main jam, rather than raising livestock? Meaning both total goats and goats actively in milk. And how much dedicated goat space would you recommend for the minimum 3 goats? 1 to 2 acres is the most realistic for my budget area. I want to make sure she's doing things, hoping to get into things that are realistic for the space she can afford. Thanks, loves the channel, and can't wait to get into the courses on our website. So that's cool, Lisa. If you become a Homesteady Pioneer, link below, you get access to our bonus courses, things I used to teach at local schools, bonus video courses, other experts other than me. So dive in, Lisa. Have fun. Good question. I am going to kind of steer you away from this, and then also, if you want to do this, answer the question. So first off, if you don't want dairy to be the main jam of your homestead, that is probably not the animal to add to the homestead. And let me explain. Here at our homestead, our main focuses are dairy animals. We are huge milk consumers. We drink milk like it's going out of style, which it kind of is right now. People are like all into almond juice, which is not milk. They do not have mammary glands. That is juice. Or water, or gross. I know I'm gonna offend somebody by calling almond juice gross, but I'm sorry. A lot of people think milk is gross and they comment that on my videos. So man, right back at you. I think your almond thing is gross. My mom loves almond drink. So I don't think you're a bad person if you like almond drink, because my mom likes it, but I don't like almond drink. Anyways, we are huge milk consumers, and so it makes total sense for us to be focused on milk here at this homestead. Being big milk consumers means it makes sense for us to have dairy animals, because I'm going to be honest, when you have dairy animals, you are a slave to those dairy animals. They need to be milked every day. You don't have to necessarily do the milking every day, but they need to be milked, which means you need to be constantly on top of who's milking them. Are they getting milked out by either their kids in the case of goats, or a calf in our case? If you want to go on a vacation, you got to figure out the milk situation. So don't plan on vacations or have a good system in place to take care of that during the vacations. And even still, you're going to worry about it because it's messing up the routine. Dairy animals need a good routine. Dairy takes over your life. There's a reason why I myself am not a big fan of, for me, having dairy animals. And that's why. I don't like to have that kind of routine in my life. I like to kind of wake up each day and do something a little different. Kay likes milking, she likes dairy animals, and I love our cows, don't get me wrong, and I love the product. But you gotta be dedicated to the cause. And if you're not that into dairy being your jam, then it's probably gonna not work out great for you. And if you're getting Nigerian crosses, they're gonna be small. They're not gonna be good for meat, which is okay because you probably don't wanna kill your cute little fuzzy goats anyway. But my point is then they're not gonna be doing anything. Because if it's not your jam, you're not gonna keep up on it like you should, and you're not gonna get any kind of export from it. And I find homesteading things are more enjoyable when you get an export or something from it that you really cherish. If you cherish cute, snuggly goats, that might be enough. and once or twice in a year making cheese from the little bit of milk you'll get, and then you'll stop milking and whatever. Okay, if that's the case, then just get 3. You should always have 3 goats. We're going to have 3 goats. You shouldn't have less, and you definitely shouldn't have more because it's not your jam. So there it is. There's your answer. Get 3 goats if you really want to just have cute little fuzzy goats. If you don't really want to focus on raising livestock, as you've said here, you want to have a food forest, you want to do gardening, you probably would do well with some ducks. Ducks are not too destructive in a food forest. They can actually be really good for the food forest. Don't get perching ducks on a young food forest. Like Muscovies would not be good for a young one because they would land in the trees and kind of break off the boughs. But ducks can be really good for the fertility of your property, of your land. They're more cute and cuddly than chickens are. Different breeds of ducks can be way more personable. You can bring them into your house if you're one of those weird people who like to do that. Again, I'm going to insult somebody there. Anyway, ducks could be a nice option for you if it's not your real jam. And then when you're not really into taking care of the livestock, they're ducks. They're fine. They swim in water. They produce eggs. They produce more ducks. And if you don't like them, it's easy. If you're tired of the livestock thing, it's not going to be hard to sell a couple ducks like we're doing right now. $5 if you want more than 5, or 2 Muscovies for 20. That's what I'm asking. So $10 for 2, but if you want a bunch of them, like 4 or 5, $5 a piece. Because I just want to get them to a nice home. I'm not really trying to make a bunch of money off Muscovies. Or, I mean, if you just want to have a couple pet goats, again, get 3 of them. Get the small ones. And, you know, do the milk thing. When they have their babies, they'll be in milk. Milk them for a month. It'll be fun. And then when you get tired of it, dry them off and you're all good. And there it is. All right, Lisa, let us know what you do. I'd like to find out when you get your land. Do you get goats? Do you get ducks? What do you do? Let me know. Natasha asks a question. We talked about how we have discussed on our last Ask the Cowgirl, perhaps splitting the field with a farmer, having him hay the field. We keep half the bales, he takes half the bales. She asks, have you considered winter stockpiling and rotational grazing through those fields in winter? I've heard great success has been seen by those who practice this, such as Gabe Brown or the lesser known Sean and Beth Doherty. There is even some that say hay left standing, especially fescues, retain more nutrients than cut hay. Thoughts? Good question, Natasha. Often is the case with some of this, how do I want to word this? Creative approaches to feeding. How's that? As is often the case with a lot of these creative approaches to feeding livestock. And when I say creative approaches, what I mean is something that is different than what has been traditionally done by small family farms. These are more creative solutions. Stockpiling winter hay, leaving it standing through the winter. This I would apply to forage, growing your own, not forage, what's the word? Growing your own, because we got asked about this too. Fodder, that's the word. Growing your own fodder. All these creative approaches that are different from traditional family farm practices. What I find is, despite the fact that they may have a little bit more of a benefit, there's a reason why family farms for, decades have brought processed feeds in and stockpiled hay in bales. And the reason why is, if you're a small family operation, especially like a homestead, doing it kind of more part-time, some of these more creative approaches to feeding cost you more in time and effort than they get you back in savings or quality. So when it comes to winter stockpiling, this is a great example of this, Natasha. I don't know the science whether or not it's better. Maybe there's been some studies to show that for certain things like fescues, there's better nutrients for stockpiled hay. If I had a huge beef operation here and it was my full-time job, I was going out there every day and working with my beef herd, this would make maybe more sense than doing the hay split, because then I could use all the hay that's out there for me and my herd, and I wouldn't have to split it with a farmer. And there are some people that talk about how doing hay is bad for your pastures. Some believe that it's better to do this kind of stockpiling. Whatever the case, because I have 2 dairy cows and not a huge herd, and it's not my full-time job, think through the amount of work that winter stockpiling would add to my life. So I had one bad day, as you saw in our hay video, where the guy showed up with a big truckload of hay and we stockpiled it. It took me one, afternoon. Now, for the rest of the year, when we need hay for our cows, we go up, climb up a ladder, drop a hay bale down. It's that easy. It takes us 2 minutes. In the winter time, when there are 3-foot snow drifts out in my field, we get a lot of snow and a big field can get some serious drifts. I can wake up, have my morning coffee, walk down to my plowed driveway, out to my barn where there's lights. It's insulated, so it's warmer. There's running water that I can lift up instantly and it's on, and the frost-free hydrants. I can go out to that barn, toss a hay bale down to the cows that are right there outside of the barn in the holding pen there. I can do all the other animal chores from inside the barn, and then I come back inside and have another latte, which you all know I enjoy. So, the version of me who now goes outside, does all the animal chores in the barn, but then has to hop in the gator, drive up the hill, which is not plowed, hopefully find a path through a couple snow drifts to where my 2 dairy cows are in the field out there in the snow. Try to figure out, okay, they've pretty much covered this. Some of the stuff's covered by snow. This stuff's too hard packed. They can't get to that. I better move them. Now I'm fencing out in a foot of snow or 2 feet of snow. This is one of those things where it just does not make sense for me to spend my time and my effort for whatever savings or benefit might be there by doing winter stockpiling. Not true if it was my full-time job, perhaps. Perhaps not true if I had a way more cattle out there. But for 2 girls, and I believe this is the case for most homesteaders who are doing the homestead thing part-time as a hobby, my homesteading is not a full-time job. YouTube, making you videos, is my full-time job. Homesteading is what I do in my spare time when I'm not running my business, which is the content business I run. So it's similar. I can do it more here than maybe the average person with a 9-to-5, but it's not a full-time thing out there. So for most of us who have that experience where our homestead is kind of our part-time to hobby time venture, do way better to just buy hay and just buy feed and just do it like it's been done for the last century with, modern feed production. Because it will save you time, and what you'll save in time is money. I strongly believe that. Time is better than money because you can make more money, but you cannot make more time. I don't want to spend the winter outside in snow drifts to try to get my 2 dairy cows and stockpiled hay. I hope that makes sense, Natasha, and I hope for all you who have a homestead, you can apply that basic rule of really looking hard, not into, well, I might save $1 per thing, or I won't have to buy hay over the winter, I'll save $500, to really looking through what you might be saving and notice what you will be losing. Because with everything in life, there are costs associated, and you have to just identify what is the true cost. You might save a ton of money eating at McDonald's every day versus eating farm fresh food from your local farmer's market, but what's the cost? Life is about more than saving money, and vice versa. With this example, while the nutrients might be a little bit better in the field, what I'm getting my cows is not McDonald's every day. It's good quality hay that we paid not a ton of money for, and for my small herd it's going to save me in time and effort, so I'll do that every day. You may hear I'm getting a little hoarse here. I'm still getting over that cold that I had. Talked about a couple videos in my haying video, actually. Cindy Shaw says she's starting her own herd of Holsteins bred for the show ring. Have you ever thought of showing Luna and Ladybug? Good question, Cindy. I have. I love the idea of taking our cute little mid-sized mini jerseys to the fair and showing them off as something very unique and very special. But we have disease-free cows. We purchased them from a disease-free herd, and I don't know, going to the shows, how that could open them up to more possibility. Now, people who take their cattle to the fairs, they're good people who are keeping close eye on their cattle and really showing their best. But as we all know, I just had a cold. Usually the first day you get a cold, you don't realize you have that cold. It's not till it's already taken over your system. So things could slip through, and if I don't go to the fair, nothing will slip through, and if I do take the cows to the fair, something might. Plus, there is a lot of work involved in showing livestock, and we already do show our livestock to almost 60,000 subscribers. So while I like the idea, I don't think we will ever do it, because you only have so much time in a day, and it's just not something that will get back from it what we would want to, what it would cost. So I don't think we ever will. Maybe someday, maybe we do it with the kids once just to see what it's like, but I don't think so. Not anytime soon. Let's change animals. Let's talk about chickens. We haven't talked about chickens in a long time. Walter wants to know, what age do I butcher my meat chickens? Do I defeather or skin them? Walter, depends. I'm going to assume, you actually did make it clear. You said meat chickens, so we're talking about Cornish crosses, I'm assuming. That's my go-to meat bird. We have done Rangers in the years past. We usually wind up doing a batch of Rangers too, but my go-to is the Cornish cross if I'm doing meat birds, and I usually butcher them around 8 weeks. I find at 8 weeks the females are a little bit smaller, so if you want to go for, a little bit smaller tender bird, the females are there, the males are a bit bigger. I get a nice selection at 8 weeks, and I never have mortality issues at 8 weeks. It seems like they're fine. The Rangers gotta go another 4 weeks on top of that, so usually like 12 to 16 weeks for the Rangers, depending on what size we're shooting for. And I try to pluck them all. I like a plucked bird. I find looks better. Now, depending on what you're doing with the animal, it might not matter, but we do try to pluck them. Even when we butchered them ourselves, we plucked all our birds. If we did a bad job on one, it would get skinned. But plucking is the way we usually go. I find skinning a chicken, you're losing some of the presentation and the skin. I like the skin on chicken. Some of the fat's going to go along with that. So overall, I prefer a plucked bird. It does add a ton of time and effort to the process. It's just something you got to be ready for. Or pay a butcher to do. In later years, we brought ours to a butcher. The early years, we processed all our own, but we got lazy. Superfan Karen L, who helps answer a lot of questions as much as she does ask them on this channel. Karen, thank you for all the times you've helped answer questions. We really appreciate you on the Homesteady channel. Karen says, traditional archer here. So we're talking about bow and arrows. I did a video on how to shoot a bow. Haven't gone into compounds yet, just recurves for the last few years or so. What type of bow do I have? How much did I pay for it? Hope you don't mind me asking. No, I don't, Karen. You could figure it out by looking at it, and you could look up the price. Plus, it's an older bow. I spent this a long time ago. I shoot a Prime compound bow. The company is Prime. It's under, I think G5 is the outdoors company that runs Prime. Prime is a unique kind of compound bow. They have what's, I believe, called the quad cam system. If you look at the cams on the bow, that's the wheels at the top at the bottom. There are like 2 cams attached. Most bows have one in between the limb like this. That bow has 2, and that's supposed to take some cam torque or cam lean out of the equation. Kind of big words here, but basically it's to have a nice straight clean shot. It's an expensive bow when I bought it, which was 5 years ago, I believe, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. 7 years ago, I think. It was a $1,000 bow. Compound bows, the upper tier, are generally in the thousands, but you can get nice compounds for $500, and the technology back then has improved. So you could get a $500 bow nowadays that would probably be right on par with my bow back then. The reason I got the Prime, the way I selected that bow, the way you should select a compound bow, go to a store with your budget, go to a pro shop, say to the pro shop, I want to buy a compound bow, I want to spend around $700. They'll give you 3 or 4 options: a Matthews, a Hoyt, hopefully a Prime, maybe an Elite, maybe a PSE, maybe a Bear. Take them to the shooting range and shoot them. And what you want to look for is just downrange. Make sure you know how to basic form. Watch our how to shoot a hunting bow video if you don't know how to shoot basic form. Shoot them and see downrange what happens. Whichever bow already is grouping the best for you, and what grouping means is your arrows are all in the same area. Because the bow hasn't been fit to you yet, you will not necessarily be hitting the bullseye. But if all your prime bow arrows are like this, real close group, and you're shooting a Hoyt and they're like here, here, and here, this bow's working better for you. So start with the bow that works better for you within your budget. I don't really suggest you stick with any particular brand as much as just shoot it and see what works for you. There's really good bows from many different companies. Shoot them, see what feels best for you, and a good pro shop will let you try them all, make sure they fit you, and you'll let you shoot them. You're gonna drop a lot of money with them over the years with the bow and getting the bow tuned and buying accessories. They better let you take some time on their range to try them. And if they don't, go somewhere else. I've had some really garbage pro shops in the past, and I've had some great ones. It does take looking, and you might have to drive a ways. I used to drive like an hour to go to my pro shop, which wasn't great, but it was worth it. It's getting really noisy upstairs. I apologize for all the extra sounds you're hearing. Why do concrete for the barn? Jessica wants to know. I talk a lot about, whenever we mention your barn design, do concrete floors. Don't do gravel, don't do dirt. Why? Because cleaning, Jessica. It's so much easier to clean a barn that has concrete on the floor. What happens when you have goats? You feed goats hay, and when they pull out the hay they don't like, it ends up on the floor. And if you have gravel, what happens is that hay gets matted on top of the gravel. It becomes all messy with poop and nastiness, and it forms like an organic matter. And then when you go to clean that with your pitchfork, you shove it down in that hay pile and it gets stuck, and you lift it up and you hit gravel. You can't really punch through the hay, and you're prying it and you break your pitchfork, and you're like, oh, why didn't I listen to Ost from Homesteady? It's another pitchfork I wasted this week cleaning up after my goats. He told me concrete, I should have listened. Same with dirt, same thing. It's just awful to clean that stuff. What happens with concrete, goats eat their hay. They like goats, they waste hay because they're goats. They're like, hey, this guy's made of money, let's just waste a bunch of hay on him. But they walk around with their little hoofs on the hay, on the concrete, and that kind of pulverizes it. Gravel has give to it. Concrete does not. Concrete stays put. And the little hoofs kind of pulverize up the hay. And if you don't let it get too thick, what you wind up with is something you can't even hardly pitchfork. You got to scoop it up with a scoop because it's all pulverized dust. Now, if you let it go further, sure, it will pile up. But then when you go with your pitchfork, you don't get absorbed by the gravel giving underneath. You go and you hit the bottom and off it goes. So much easier to clean a barn with concrete floor. If you're worried about the temperature for the floor on the concrete, well, you're going to do the same thing with a concrete floor that you're going to do with dirt or gravel, and you're going to put bedding in there so that they're not cold. They'd be cold on hard floor, they'd be cold on concrete, they'd be cold on gravel. So that doesn't change. It's just way easier to clean, and you don't wind up after 2 or 3 years with like a gravel floor. Every year you clean that, you're losing gravel. You're making a pit in your barn that you're gonna have to fill. Concrete doesn't do that. When you scoop up the hay and send it off on its way, there it goes, and you still have a concrete floor. It is so much better. I did it. I built a barn with gravel on the floor thinking like, it'll drain easier and everything. All the pee will just go down into the soil. It's more natural. And you know what I did? Like 3 years later, I poured a concrete floor over it because I was sick and tired of working on gravel floors. So trust me, concrete floors. End of story. Who would have known that like I'd get the most passionate today of all the questions talking about concrete flooring? Me. I would have known that because I hate other floors. Let's talk about something more peaceful. How about eating bunny rabbits? Chris Spencer wants to know, They have their limit for laying hens in the city limits. I love that. They like maxed out. The city said you can have 6 laying hens, and they got 6. They're right, like right there, city. We're gonna have as much as we can. They like raising their own meat. They can't do meat chickens. They tried quail, but the rooster quail were too noisy. So they're thinking about meat rabbits. What do we think about meat rabbits? Never done them. So I have to warn you, Chris, this is coming from someone who's never done it. And that advice is usually bad. But the things I'm gonna say are ring of truth without having ever done them. I know this to be true. So first off, rabbit meat is, if you like chicken, you're gonna like rabbit. It's not much different in quality. You won't have the crispy chicken skin like I talked about a few questions previous, but you also will not have to pluck a rabbit. The way that you butcher a rabbit is much quicker, much easier than a chicken because there's no skin to pluck. This is gonna be a little, we're gonna talk about killing bunnies here, so if you don't want to, skip ahead a few questions. The way generally it's done, there's a thing you can buy that you attach to like your barn wall that's like a little thing. You slide the rabbit's head into the little thing and then you pull and you sever the head from the spine, which kills the rabbit. Then you cut it, bleed it out, and you learn how to cut the fur. So you basically are pulling off a mitten, just like poof, off comes the fur, and there you go. I mean, then you gut the thing, but that's it. Versus a chicken, you have to pluck, you have to gut the thing and kill the thing the same way, but killing you need to put it in a cone, let it bleed out, or you can just do the old hatchet trick, but that gets kind of messy. And then there's the plucking, which is just like, drives you nuts, or if you're using a machine, that's costly. So rabbits are cheaper to do, and if you like eating chicken, you like eating rabbit. So yeah, go for meat rabbits. I find probably the biggest reason people don't is because they're afraid to kill a rabbit. But I noticed that you are a hunter and a fisherman, so rock on, fellow hunter fisherman. Everyone who always asks, even though we already did a video on it, that's my fishing license, and should be my hunting license. I actually keep my hunting license on my hunting gear. I don't wear this hunting unless I'm bird hunting. But anyway, I'm a hunter and a fisherman too, Chris, which you probably know. So that's a great way to add meat to your table, especially if you have a small acreage. And if you're already a hunter, then killing a rabbit is probably not gonna be as hard. It still will be hard. Just because we're hunters doesn't mean we love killing things. Usually we take it more seriously. I don't kill, somebody asked me when I talked about selling these Muscovy ducks, maybe somebody asked in the Q&A today, we'll find out if that pops up, why don't just butcher them? And it's because I don't like killing ducks. They're so cute in their little faces with their bills, and then you're like, okay, Donald, let's do this. I'm sorry, I'm a horrible person. I don't like killing ducks. So just because you're a hunter doesn't mean it will be easy to kill a cute little bunny. But if you're okay with the idea, if you can get past that, then there's no other reason why you shouldn't raise meat rabbits. I think I will try meat rabbits at some time. I don't have the same feeling about rabbits as I do ducks, probably because I did grow up with a rabbit, pet rabbit, and as anyone who owns a pet rabbit knows, they're like vicious and mean. So where ducks are like friendly and nice, yeah, rabbits I don't feel the same way about, so I could probably join you on Rabbit Butchering Day. You live close by? Maybe I will. We'll make a video. Alright, enough about killing cute fuzzy creatures. Let's talk about something else. Perfect, let's talk about dairy cows. No killing cute animals there, unless they stop producing. Ask Homesteady. Deb wants to know, why is she considered a mini Jersey? Ladybug. She seems as big as my Jersey. How much does she weigh? Deb, minis are not registered as minis by weight. They are registered, there's a new word. They're registered by height. Ladybug is a mid-sized mini because of her height, where she stands at, which off the top of my head, I want to say is 42 inches, but I could be totally wrong about that. Anyway, when you look at Ladybug and where she stands height-wise, that gets her registered as a mid-sized mini. And Luna will be not a mid-size, she is a mini because she was bred to Ladybug, who's a mid-size, and a bull who's a full-on mini. So Luna will be even shorter, which means she probably will be a legitimate mini, which off the top of my head, I don't know the numbers to, but you can Google that easy. But just so you know now, it's not weight, it's height. That's how you determine if they're a mini Jersey. Where did I put my hat? The Toasted Rabbit wants to know. That's a great name. Speaking of cooking up little bunnies, do you process your deer on your own, or do you take... Okay, reading. Do you process your deer on your own, or do you take the deer to be processed by a local butcher? I would be really interested in seeing how you dispatch and process the deer. Best of luck this hunting season. So, the Toasted Rabbit, the way I dispatch the deer is I shoot them. Usually with an arrow or a bullet. So that's how I do that. And you will hopefully see that this year, because every hunt I go on, I'm taking my cameras with me. This will be the first season that all my hunts are on camera. I figured I have some really great partners right now. Moultrie Game Cameras has been partnering with us to get us some game cameras on the property to keep track of the wildlife, the deer, and everything else. And also Summit Tree Stands, who both Moultrie and Summit, I was a customer of theirs before they sponsored us with, you know, partnering up with gear and stuff. I paid good money for their products. They're great stuff. Now they've given us these products to show on the channel, which I am super excited about because it's great stuff. And so I got to film the stuff being used. So we're going to be out in the field, sharing the hunt, sharing the whole process. And for sure, you will see me get a deer, and you will see the whole process behind how we take that deer from wild walking in the woods to on the dinner plate. We'll show it every step of the way. If you really want to see it all, you can go to thishishomesteady.com, click on shop or store, and then down there there's a whitetail course. You can buy the course. It's on sale right now this month. But we're going to show as much as we can on the channel depending on what happens this season. So stay tuned for that. Now, to answer your question, I process my own deer. And I think you all should too, because deer, for one, it's one of the easier animals. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm like itching my nose. Hold on. Let me take an itch break here. There we go. Sorry. Just itchy. Deer is one of the easier animals to process. Venison is best deboned, generally speaking. If you freeze the bones and then thaw them, the aging of the bones on deer can give it a rancid flavor. The meat on venison needs to be thoroughly cleaned of silver skin and sinew, because again, that and also fat can give it a just a rancid taste. If you had venison and you think you don't like it, you've never had venison prepared properly. My venison, I've had people who refuse to eat deer, don't like hunting, sit down at my dinner table, and I don't tell them what I'm serving. I just bring out the steak and they eat it and they rave about the steak. I once had an aunt who's not into hunting and would not eat venison, sitting there eating it and just saying, "Oh, you cook steak like your mother does." Now, my mom doesn't cook venison. She never has. She said, my aunt goes, "You cook steak just like your mother. Oh, it's so good. What recipe did you use?" Like, just a little bit of salt and, you know, right on the skillet. And, well, it was venison the whole time. So if you prepare it the correct way, and we'll just try to show that if we can get a deer this year, it can make a world of difference. So when you're butchering the deer, what you're basically doing is removing all the muscles. You've got to remove them off the bone, and then you got to trim them. So there's no real special technique to getting special cuts like might be on, for example, a pig or a beef. On a beef, you're going to want some T-bones, which means you're going to want to cross cut along the spine there, get the loin and then the tenderloin on the bottom, so you get that nice T-bone, the little tenderloin and the big loin on the other side. And you're going to cut those steaks with the bone, and that's trickier when you're cutting through bone, trying to make the steaks look right. That takes more skill. But a deer, you just pull that loin off, cut away all the stuff that doesn't look like meat, and there you go, you're done. So it's a great animal to learn to butcher on because it's very simple. You're just removing all the muscles from the bones and removing everything off of the muscle that doesn't look like red meat. And that doesn't take a lot of skill to do an okay job with. You don't cut through. Now you can get fancy. You can make T-bones. You can make, rack of venison or whatever you want to do, but you don't have to, and it's usually best if you just keep it simple and debone it all and trim it up real nice. So it's a great animal to learn this process with, and it's not too big of an animal that you can't do it yourself. My very first deer I learned totally on my own with me and Kay, worked on it together. I had a magazine, an old copy of Field and Stream magazine, told you the basics of how to process your own deer. It was drizzling that day. I'm outside standing under an A-frame ladder with my very first deer hanging there, a magazine in one hand, a knife in the other. This was before YouTube was big, no videos on how to do this for free online. And I just did it. I just read paragraph by paragraph what to do. No pictures, just paragraph descriptions. Cut away at it, pulled the meat off, brought it inside. And then once it was inside, Kay helped me trim it all and then put it into long-term storage. And, 10 years. I've been hunting now for 9. So 9 years later. And realistically, if I had to guess, solid 20 deer, plus what friends have done. I mean, I've probably butchered 30 deer. Now I can do it pretty well. I've actually last year had the privilege of actually helping a butcher, someone who's trained to do this. I filmed him doing the whole process, and it's very similar to the process I do, just he's way better at it because he's a butcher. And that actually will have excerpts coming out on the channel after I get a deer, because I filmed it, but I never released it because it wasn't hunting season yet. So stay tuned for that too. That'll be good. Great question. Yes, I do it myself, and you should too. The only thing I'm going to maybe do this year, not myself, is maybe have some, if I get a nice big buck, have it turned into like summer sausage and things. But I should probably do that myself too, just learn how to do that. I've never done like pepperonis or meat sticks, so maybe a good video to do on the channel. Try it out. Sambalina. Have you ever thought about using electric netting for the goats? That way you can move their enclosure instead of tethering them. I cringe at the idea of tethering a goat. I plan on using the electric netting until I'm able to build permanent fencing, with my property being the perimeter, then rotational pastures. Okay. Sambalina, I have used this before. Squash Hollow was not a great place to pasture with netting because it was mostly a ridge with lots of forest. So talking about, ridge properties and things, it was very hard to do a nice clean square and then move that. It took hours every time you wanted to move the fencing, and it takes a long time to fence an area that a couple goats, 4 or 5 goats, will go through in 3 days, and they're done. We had 4 goats, I think, and they would just, boom, it would be done in like 2-3 days, and I'd have to move it again. And who has time to spend like 2 hours, 3 hours every 3 days to move goats around? People who are doing it full time, that's who. Not homesteaders. I certainly at the time did not. Now this property, it's a little simpler because it's a nice big open pasture. We could actually figure out like sections to do. But the netting is just, it's not my favorite. It is a hassle to work with to get it nice and straight. It sags. Where it sags, smaller goats will leap over it. I say smaller, what I mean is lighter. Tall but light goats can, like La Mancha, she would just every time jump right over that stuff. So she would always be out. And then if something happened with the charge not being too hot, the little ones would bulldoze out of it. It's okay, but I don't love it. If you're gonna use it, make sure you have good perimeter fencing first. I would not suggest getting goats without some good permanent fencing first, because this will fail you. This movable electric netting you will have problems with, and they'll get out. And then if you don't have perimeter fencing, they'll be gone. So the best way to use the netting is within perimeter fencing, having good pasture areas that you then divide and move the netting. And if that's what you're doing in a regular interval every time, it's like this much and this much and this much, then it's a lot easier. Now don't forget, A lot of times with the netting, it's going to ground out if you have high grass you're putting it in. So you have to weed whack the perimeter of where it's going, which means you need to know exactly where the perimeter is going and not just estimate it. Otherwise, you're going to be weed whacking again. It's a hassle. I prefer using Gallagher Quick Fence. You can find that on Amazon. Again, shop through homesteady.com if you're going to use Amazon. That'll get us a little bonus. Gallagher Quick Fencing is a nice product, but don't use it in the winter because it broke on us over the winter and it was not made durable for winter. So it's a spring, summer, fall thing. Or just step-in posts in line like we use for our cows, but you would have to get it tighter and you would have to get more strands, which would take longer. So if you're gonna rotationally graze goats, we are not currently doing this. If you're going to do it, the best way to do it is have a big giant pasture area that is fenced. And if you want to rotationally graze, sure, you could just let them go. That's not rotationally grazing. If you want to rotationally graze them, then have a big enclosed area and then use Gallagher Smart Fence. What it is, it's a big spool with stakes attached to it. If you have a giant rectangle that you're dividing, you can just go and then you move it, and then you move it, and you can just keep moving them along with the smart fence. Google Gallagher Smart Fencing, and I got to get mine repaired because, like I said, it broke last winter. So we'll see how they handle the repairs process, see if they make good on it, because it should have held up and it didn't. But if you don't use it in the winter, it should be okay. It was just something about the winter made the line snap, and now it's just a tangled mess. And since moving, we haven't got it fixed. But it worked good in the spring and summer. Yeah, the netting stuff is okay, but I don't know. It's time consuming and it can be a hassle. So use it within a perimeter where the netting is just your divider, or use it for, I've used it for chickens, and that's been nice because the chickens don't go through that area as quickly. The problem with the sheep and the goats is even a lot of netting. I mean, I'm talking 300-400 linear feet of the stuff. They burn that area up so quick, and you got to move it, and moving it is time consuming. And unless you have every 3 days a couple hours to donate to this, and you are happy to do that, you're going to be annoyed like I was, and it's not going to work out. So there it is. I'm going to do one more question here and then shut this one down, because as you can hear, I am getting hoarse. My throat, my voice. I'm not getting a horse. You did not hear me say I'm getting a horse. I'm getting hoarse. You got to be careful on these homesteading channels what you say. Stephanie wanted to know, we talked about the unfortunate circumstance some people have had where they breed a cow to a larger bull and then the cow cannot get the calf out and they have to cut the calf up inside the cow. Not fun. So Stephanie asked, do they not do C-sections for cows? I know it would be expensive, legitimately curious, because cutting up a cow to get it out of the mother sounds horrifying. It does sound horrifying, Stephanie. The problem is, for a homesteader, that's what's going to happen. A homesteader who's doing this, you know, as a hobby, not their full-time thing, if they have problems, the expense, cow C-section, it's a thing. People do it. You can find videos, if you care to watch those videos, or online, that it's actually a practice. My guess is that if you have some really valuable genetics and that cow that you don't want to die, and you're the kind of person who sells genetics and makes money off of good genetics, then you can afford to bring in a vet to do a cow C-section and then keep that cow contained so it can heal and all that stuff. But realistically, for a homesteader, you're not going to have the kind of money to have a cow C-section and then afterward the cow can't move so it can heal. And no, that's not happening. So what's going to happen if you breed and the calf has trouble is they're going to have to cut the calf up and pull it out in pieces. So better yet, just pay attention when you're breeding your animals. I'm going to shut this one down. If you want to get a question answered, just remember #AskHomesteady. And if you like our Q&As, you like what we do here on Homesteady, you can support us in 2 ways. Become a Homesteady Pioneer. It's $5 a month. It's a quarter per episode. In return, you get bonus content. You can, with one click, download like 20 bonus podcasts to put on your iPhone and listen to while you drive. There's classes that are taught by me and other experts, different things, different interviews that we don't have on the channel. There's also discounts. If you're gonna plant an orchard, Dave from Northeast Edible will give you 10% discount on all your orchard plants. That can add up when you're planting an orchard, so that's good. You get discounts off John Siskovich's books and some chicken butchering supplies and whatever you're looking into. You can learn more clicking down there and wherever that link is. Or if you're gonna shop at Amazon, type in www.amsteady.com before you shop at Amazon. It forwards you there. We get a little bonus for sending you there, and that's a big way you can support the channel without spending a penny extra. We're very grateful for that. Thank you so much, and we will see you in next week's video.